a couple of little videos from Plan staff who are in different jobs within Plan International, who have sort of shared their journey and some tips for you if you're thinking about coming into the international NGO sector. And then I'll finish up with some sort of suggestions that you might want to think about if you're looking in this sector. And then at the end of that, I mean, hopefully that'll not take too long to cover it. Happy to take questions at the end of the session. So just starting maybe with sort of my own background, I actually trained as a chartered accountant. So spent, I guess, my career's in two parts. It's 10 years in the private sector, and then sort of a jumped ship and moved into the not-for-profit sector. And I trained as a chartered accountant partly because I wanted to have a profession, because I knew that I didn't always want to be an accountant, but I wanted to have that sort of something that I could always fall back on, sort of that professional background. And I also always wanted to be financially independent, and I sort of worked out that accountants tend to be quite financially independent. So that was another reason. That's how careful my career decisions were at the time. But I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I grew up in Northern Ireland, and Georgia will know. I grew up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. It was a very insular place. It was very inward looking. There was very little diversity, other than which one of two religions you were. And so I really wanted to sort of explore the world beyond. And that was another reason why I sort of chose to do become a chartered accountant, because I knew it was a qualification that would allow me to travel. So one of the things, training as a chartered accountant with KPMG, I do remember being desperately disappointed when I applied to do a 3-month secondment in New York and was refused because my office wouldn't let me go because they needed me to stay and do some work in Belfast. And I remember being desperately disappointed about that. But a few months later, I had the opportunity to go overseas with Raleigh International. It was then called Operation Raleigh, and I'm sort of this was really probably one of the most important things that I did in terms of future career choices. I went to Zimbabwe in 1992 and did the Raleigh International experience, which was about youth development, but it was also about working with communities in Zimbabwe. And it was the best 3 months of my life, and really had a huge influence. And Raleigh International still is still going, and I'll share you some details with opportunities with organisations like Raleigh International. But returning from Raleigh International, I then, that gave me the confidence, I guess, to go off and travel and do lots more. So I got a job, a very jammy job, if that's the right word, as an internal auditor for Intercontinental Hotels, which has hotels all around the world. And so I got to travel all around the world for about 2 years, where I would go to each country for about 6 weeks and do an audit of the hotel in that country. But it allowed me huge opportunity to at the weekends put on a backpack and go and see and the most amazing places, from Nicaragua to China and Colombia, all around the world. But you can only live out of a suitcase for so long, and I was literally living out of a suitcase. After about 2 years, I was waking up in the morning sort of pining for my own toaster and kettle. And so I came back to Northern Ireland and I got a job as a management consultant. And that was, it was with BDOs to Hayward, and it was because of my qualifications as a chartered accountant and my experience in the hospitality sector. I was able to sort of bluff my way, I think is probably the best way, into a job as a management consultant with BDOs to Hayward. But again, I was always a bit unsettled about the private sector, and I was doing very well in Stoy Hayward, and it's actually was moving up the career path quite well. And I remember getting quite sort of nervous about that, because I thought, goodness, I don't want to end up as a partner, which obviously is very lucrative and I would be earning lots of money. But I knew there were still other things I wanted to do and explore. So I phoned Concern Worldwide, and Concern Worldwide is an Irish NGO. And I said to them, look, have you any opportunities? They ran a volunteering program at the time. Do you need any accountants? I'm an accountant. can I, you know, do you have any jobs? And they said no. And I was like, oh, okay, that plan's gone, isn't it? Right, let me try another option here. And I was a bit of a loss what to do. And they phoned me a week later and they said, actually, we just have had a vacancy arise in Burundi, and we were wondering if you would go as a volunteer accountant to Burundi for 6 months. And I was like, yep, I'll do that. And I came off the phone, and this was before the internet, and I got the atlas out and I looked up Burundi because I didn't know where Burundi was. So off I set for 6 months working with Concern Worldwide as their country financial accountant. And again, one of those experiences that was just incredible. And when I came back to my job as a management consultant, I mean, they were very sort of perplexed that I went, and tried to talk me out of going because it would affect my career, and couldn't understand why I would leave a well-paid job to go and work as a volunteer. But when I came back, I went straight back to BDO Swahili and said, sorry, I can't go back into this private sector. It's, you know, this whole sort of working for charity is under my skin. So I was a bit unemployed for a little while, but again, I used my accountancy background to just work as a independent consultant, and got a job helping out a charity, and ended up became their financial director. It was a domestic charity. So that was really when I transitioned from the private sector, and that was in 1998, from the private sector into the not-for-profit. And so I worked in domestic as well as international charities. But you know, I think if you work for an international NGO, it gets under your skin. So I set off to Zimbabwe again in 2002-03. But what I was trying to do at this stage was to move away from being a finance person to be more of a general sort of in senior management level. And so I got a job as the assistant country director, setting up our programs in Zimbabwe in 2002-03, which was when there was a big Southern African food crisis. And so I worked very closely in sort of setting up, you know, food program in 2 or 3 districts to 500,000 people. Within 3 months, we had set up food distributions to 500,000 people in Zimbabwe, which carried on right throughout that food crisis. When I came back, when I finished that stint in Zimbabwe, I came back to London, but again worked in domestic charity. But I took a role on the board of trustees of Concern UK at that time, because I was based in London, and from that, the opportunity of the executive director of Concern UK arose, and I applied for it. And I was there for 10 years before becoming the chief executive of Plan International UK. So that's really a very quick potted history. And as you can see, it's never a straightforward path. And as I say to people when I'm talking about career, it's as important what you say no to as what you say yes to. So there was opportunities that arose for me that would have taken me in a completely different direction. And I was very clear about what I didn't want to do. I wasn't always clear what I really did want to do, and it was about taking those opportunities. But let me just share my screen now, because I'm going to give you a bit of a overview of Plan International. Right, is this working? Can you see that? Thumbs up from somebody. I see somebody nodding there. Let me put it onto presentation mode. Great. That didn't work. Let me try that again. Yeah, that's it now. So I'm going to start with a short video here, because international NGOs, you know, there's all sorts of NGOs. There's local NGOs based in countries, so what we call local civil society organizations, which might be a local Zimbabwean organization or a local organization in Thailand. And then we have the sort of the national ones in those countries, but then there's the international ones, and there's, you know, Plan International is an international NGO. I look after and am CEO of Plan International UK, but we actually operate in 70 countries around the world, and it's quite a complex structure. So as you start on your career path, you probably want to think about what part of the organization you're engaging with and what part you want to engage with. And I'm going to show you a video because it's very complex, and this is the easiest way to explain how we're governed and how we're set up. So let me just hand over to the video, and if George, if you can give me thumbs up to make sure the volume is working. Can you hear?
Welcome to the Plan International Staff Governance Induction. Plan International is a large global membership organization made up of different offices that all work together towards our common purpose of striving for a just world that advances children's rights and equality for girls. So what does the structure look like? Plan International Inc. is a not-for-profit organization registered in the United States that is responsible, along with its 20 members known as national organizations, for ensuring that our purpose is carried out. We have the Global Hub based in the United Kingdom, which provides services to Plan International globally to help them do their important work. Then we have 4 liaison offices in the United States, Switzerland, Belgium, and Ethiopia that work to strengthen our influence and relationships with key international, regional, and treaty bodies like the UN and the EU. We have 4 regional hubs in Thailand, Panama, Senegal, and Kenya. Their role is to support the country offices within each region that deliver our vital work through our program units. But where does the money come from and the technical help? All of the national organizations fundraise for Plan International globally and partner with our country offices in program delivery, except in India and Colombia, where they carry out fundraising and deliver programs. And that's everything in the Plan family. So what do we all have in common? Every organization within Plan International, including our members, must meet the following common requirements in order to be part of the Plan family. Purpose. We strive for a just world that advances children's rights and equality for girls. Values and behaviors. We strive for lasting impact. We are open and accountable. We work well together. We are inclusive and empowering. And we all identify ourselves with the Plan International logo and branding. Theory of change. This is our idea of how we make a difference in the countries where we work to achieve our purpose. Global strategy. Our multi-year global strategies unite us to take action in our work. So how do we look after our different parts and ensure that they all operate effectively? We have key organizational documents to help guide us in what we can and can't do. And we have our 2 main governance groups that make specific decisions that affect all of the different parts of the organization. These are the Members' Assembly and the International Board. The Members' Assembly is our highest governing body made up of board members of our national organizations. It meets twice a year to make decisions for the whole Plan family. The kinds of decisions it makes come from our organizational rule book called the bylaws. Here is the Members' Assembly to-do list that includes a number of important jobs such as setting our global strategy and approving our budget and financial statements. The International Board is the board of Plan International Inc., and its members are chosen by the Members' Assembly. It has up to 11 members. 7 of the 11 also sit on national organization boards, and at least 2 must be completely independent and ideally represent Plan International regions. This is to encourage diversity across our governance system. The International Board and its committees meet at least 4 times a year in person and often more frequently with the help of technology. The International Board also has a long list of jobs that it needs to do as set out in the bylaws. For example, overseeing the strategy, and ensuring our finances are in order. That brings us on to the leadership team. This team is made up of the Chief Executive Officer, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, and regional and executive directors. The leadership team meets regularly to ensure that Plan International is carrying out its responsibilities as expected by the International Board. So that's a quick governance tour of who we are, how we come together, how we make decisions, and how we function to deliver on our purpose. If you'd like any more information on what you've seen today, please contact us.
Oh, don't want to watch that again. Okay, great. So that's, I think, that's how plan is set out. Every international NGO will be different. Medicine Sans Frontières will have a different model. Save the Children will have a different model. But it is, I think, if you start to engage with these organisations, important to know which part of the organisation you're engaging with. And I look after Plan International UK, which is the fundraising and advocacy aspect. So we don't actually run programs ourselves, they're run via our partner in Plan International Inc. So what do we actually do? I mean, we, just to give you a sort of quick shot of it, we provide education to marginalized groups. So for example, this young lady is from Rwanda, where we provide youth clubs. So children like Florence have a safe place to socialize and learn about sexual and reproductive health. We provide clean water and sanitation. So this water pump, which is installed in the Philippines, means that girls and children don't have to walk as far to get water. And therefore, we've also installed toilets in the village. We work with the communities to create entrepreneurship opportunities, particularly focusing on women and marginalised girls. And we work to advance the right of girls internationally, which is also here in the UK. And recently, a few weeks ago, we launched our campaign on public sexual harassment or street harassment, calling on the UK government to make this a criminal offence. We also, an awful lot of our focus is to end sort of harmful practices for girls, particularly ending child marriage. And we know that coronavirus has really increased the number of child marriages, or likely to increase the number of child marriages around the world by something like 13 million is the estimate over the next 10 years, as families can't afford to keep their girls in education. Putting an end to FGM in Sierra Leone and other countries we work on, there's still very high, Somalia, there's still very high levels of FGM. And so we work with communities to educate girls. So this lady, Sanab, is an outspoken advocate against the practice, despite her mother having been a former FGM practitioner, or cutter as they're called. And we also do a lot of humanitarian response, to cyclones or food and water crisis. I'm not going to sort of stop on this, but this is just some of the stats of the number of people that plan in the UK. Through Plan UK, we have reached nearly 10 million children and young people this year. That's not representing Plan in the 70 countries in which we work, but it's what we've done through the UK. And it's worthwhile just talking about Ghana a little bit. We work UK government funded programme to deliver groundbreaking interactive learning to marginalised girls in Ghana, which we've been using, which has been really interesting because we use fully equipped studios to run sort of TV programmes to give children and girls education. And when COVID struck, it was the government of Ghana came to us to see if we could actually help them put a lot of the kids' teaching on to make the program so that they could continue their education during COVID. So that's a bit about what we do. Let me talk a little bit, the next two slides I have are talking a little bit about trends in the sector, and this is in no particular order, and this is looking very particularly through the focus of, well, partly through UK, but internationally. So one of the big trends, and it's related to a couple of things that I'll talk about in the next slide. And actually, maybe I'll go to the next slide first and come back to this. So in the wider context, we know, within the NGO sector, Black Lives Matters has really resonated throughout our sector. And it's really resonated from a point of view of looking at some of the practices within our sector, and what we're talking about now is the decolonialization of aid. So the issues of discrimination are all about power, prejudice, and so a lot of what we're looking at now within our sector is what is the prejudice and the power, and how we use our power within the sector to sort of really think about our role in that. And it's something that's really sort of challenging us to think about our own biases, to think about how we might be complicit in systematic racism through the way we are set up, and explore how we address that power imbalance. And I want to raise this because I think this is a really important issue, as people from the Northern Hemisphere, and I know we've got somebody from Cape Town here, but as we are the richer nations think about work in this sector, because the sector is changing, and it's changing quite a lot, and there's a lot of demands for the sector to change. There's a huge focus on anti-racism, but this has reignited the conversations about how appropriate it is for charities to operate in the global south with sort of a very white expat, sort of Western-based leadership. And Western-based approaches. Obviously, the Me Too campaign has also had a really resonated, particularly around all safeguarding. And as we know, a lot of the NGOs, or some of the NGOs, have had big safeguarding scandals. And so the whole, again, this comes, and ultimately the issues around the safeguarding within the sector, it comes again back to that power imbalance, the difference between the power that we, and as an NGO sector, have in relation to the people that we're trying to help, who are often have very little agency or say. And then, of course, the climate emergency is a huge issue. And, for all of the development gains that we've achieved since 1990, which have been huge, climate change is likely to put that back. So those are some of the wider sort of issues. And if we look at this maybe more in the UK perspective, we know that we've got well, it's not UK, we've got a global recession coming on. The UK government has just reneged on its manifesto commitment of 0.7% of its budget of GDP budget to overseas development. We have the first thing that's on the site, localization. There's a great demand for much more money and focus to be funneled through local NGOs rather than international NGOs, but there's a big dichotomy in there, because if you come down to the third bullet point, the increased regulation means that the big donors will not put money through the small charities because they don't have the systems and so on in place. So you've got a conflict between regulation, compliance, and systems and processes against wanting to fund and put money through local NGOs. And of course, safeguarding continues to be a phenomenally important issue within the sector. So that, if you're looking for work in this sector, I think it's important to sort of be aware of these issues. And I think it's also a bit important, I think, we across Plan International employ 13,000 people. The very, very vast majority of those are local staff within the countries in which we operate. But equally, the leadership is predominantly still in the rich and developed nations. So there's really interesting challenges for us there, and we're starting to try to address some of that. But again, in terms of the type of people that NGOs are employing, we're seeing in a lot of the countries in which we work, there is a lot of really good human capital in those countries that we should be employing rather than bringing expats in. But there is also a role for expats, but only those who are highly technical and have expertise. So there are different roles within UK NGOs, within NGOs. I mean, there's also the wider development sector, which includes research institutes like the Overseas Development Institute, a lot of people working in policy, a lot of people working in the private sector. So the private sector has become a much bigger part, working for companies like Palladium, McDonald, PwC are all doing a huge amount of work and development funded through the big institutional donors. And there's different skills. So I'm just going to share a couple of videos from some of the staff, some of my colleagues, to talk about different roles within that we employ in Plan International UK.
Hi, my name's Gemma and I'm Head of Media and Campaigns for Plan International UK. My role sits within the Communications Advocacy and UK Programmes Directorate. The remit of my role is to work with my amazing team to deliver on our key strategic campaigns for the organisation, such as public sexual harassment you might have seen recently. I also oversee with my team our corporate partnerships communication, so I work with partners such as Chelsea FC, Credit Suisse and AstraZeneca. My team also look after all of our media and external engagement, and we also have the amazing youth advisory panel within our team. We work really closely with them to really ensure that our work is youth-centred. One of the questions I've been asked is, how did I get into my role at Plan International UK? Well, I studied public relations at university and then went on to work for a public relations consultancy for a number of years, specialising in consumer and B2B PR. I loved my time in consumer and B2B PR, but I knew where my heart really lied was working in the charity sector. So I've been at Plan for almost 7 years now. I've worked across the Communications Directorate. The roles I've held include Corporate Communications Advisor, also Corporate Communications Manager, where I've led a team working on core corporate partnerships, and during this year as well as Interim Head of Communications, and now in my role of Head of Media and Campaign. If you are interested in getting into the international development sector, my main piece of advice is to do your research, do all the reading, identify where you want to work and why you want to work there. Your passion and enthusiasm will then come through within your application process and hopefully at interview. My other piece of advice is, if you can't find a role in the sector that you are really passionate about, have a look around, have a look wider. The international development sector, and especially at Plan UK, we really look favourably on bringing people's wide skill sets that they've acquired by working in corporate and other areas of the sector. So don't be disheartened if you can't get in there with the first job. It might just be, like me, you get in there a little further down the line.
Great. And as I say, I've got a couple more people to speak to, and all of these people, I suppose the interesting thing is these are staff who are recruiting people. They're all staff who are I think oh, that's the same one again. Let's try again. Next one. Let's see who we've got this time.
Hi.
Oh, right. Yeah, I want to play this one. This is a different role.
Hi everyone, my name is Amelia. I'm a Senior Policy and Advocacy Manager at Plan International UK. My job mainly involves influencing the UK government's policies, budgets and practices on how they promote gender equality and girls' rights through their international aid budget. We also do this through working with national governments in the communities we work in and international organisations such as the UN. We specifically work on girls' rights, including education and emergencies, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and girls' voice and participation in humanitarian settings. The best part of my job is working directly with the girls in communities to support them to have a say in decisions that affect their lives, so developing strategies, campaigns to get the change they want to see, whether that be ending child marriage or preventing trafficking of girls. I got into this role by studying politics at university and then got onto the fast track in the civil service. I worked for a little while in a junior policy role and then in a minister's office, but they weren't really the right roles for me, working in central government. So I took a bit of a step back and took on a role as a PA for the policy director at ActionAid. And that was the absolute best decision that I could have taken. I got to learn so much about the organisation and how big international NGOs work, and really decide where I wanted to work in the sector. From there, I took on a policy assistant role at ActionAid and then moved as policy officer to Plan about 8.5 years ago, and luckily I've had lots of promotions. The best advice I would give you is if you can try and involve yourself in campaigns at university. Those groups at Oxfam have lots of campaigning groups at university, and other networks. I think Results have one as well, and they give you political briefings, they invite you to MP events, and they're just really good examples to reference in interviews as how you understand influencing and change works. And then also, as I said in my previous example, just don't be afraid to take on administrative roles that might not be exactly what you want. You get to learn so much from senior leadership about how everything works and fits together, and gives you a really good foot in the door. Anyway, hope that was of some use, and have a lovely break. Thanks.
Right, I skipped one there, so let me see if I can just go back and get Bethan, because again, it's a different role.
Hi, my name's Bethan. I'm head of the Disaster Risk Management Unit at Plan International UK, and I've been with Plan for just about a year now. My first experience in working in international development and humanitarian response was working with a small Thai NGO at just after the Asian tsunami in 2004. From there, I went on to do a master's in international development, and once completed that, moved to Ghana to look for work and to get some experience. Once I was in Ghana, I did a couple of different roles with NGOs and also with the UN. Some were internships, and then I was lucky enough to get a role out there as well. When I came back to the UK after spending some time in Ghana, I found it quite a challenge to get roles in the UK, and ended up working in a couple of different roles. One was in a climate change charity, and then I was fortunate enough to get a role at a larger children's focused international development organisation within their humanitarian team. From there, I did a range of different functions, some within the UK, but largely overseas, and that's really where I got the bulk of my experience. Through that, found my career path, not looking specifically at technical functions, but rather focused on program operations and looking at how to go about scaling up a humanitarian response and responding on the ground. It's not an easy sector to get into, but as advice, I would say, don't give up. Try different avenues. If you find one route doesn't work for you, there might be a different option elsewhere, whether it's just a different type of organisation or applying for different type of roles. I'd also say that if you don't have experience of working in a national civil society organisation, do seek out roles where you can really build your experience from programming in a country where NGOs worked. I think whether it is for a local civil society, a national civil society organisation, or an international NGO country office, is so valuable to have that on the ground experience, and certainly for looking at recruitment into my team, would always really welcome and look for people that have that direct field experience. So good luck, and I hope you really enjoy this evening and the talk with Rose. Thanks, bye.
So let me see. Right, we've seen Amelia. Okay, so just a couple of this. My last slide now, and I'm happy to take questions. There's 3 examples of people there. So one working in comms and brand, one working in disaster emergency response, and Amelia working in policy. But don't forget, we have lots of people who work in HR, we have people who work in finance, we have lots of people who work in IT and digital, a really growing area, particularly at the minute. Lots of different roles within the NGO sector. But in terms of those 3 colleagues who spoke gave some advice. I suppose my advice is, if you can, is to volunteer. Volunteer, whether it's at home, in charities at home or abroad. And one thing I mentioned earlier, I did Raleigh International. The International Citizenship Service, ICS, is funded by the UK government. It's run through 4 or 5 different organisations: VSO, Voluntary Services Overseas, Raleigh International, Restless Development, and they all offer great opportunities for young people to go overseas and get that overseas experience. And I have to say, it is the best thing I ever did. And I know a friend of mine, her son did it recently with Restless Development and just found it invaluable. Gain technical skills and qualifications alongside your degree. This, you know, sadly, a degree will not be enough to get you into the international development sector. For me, I had my degree, but then I had my professional qualification. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got in. So there is definitely, you know, you need to be, a lot of the people that are more generalists will be local staff. And depending on the route that you want to take, you know, if you want to go into sort of programmatic work, definitely need sort of further qualifications as well as your graduate degree. Stay informed, follow NGOs on social media, read the news and publications, and network where you get the opportunities. And do think beyond field work. As I say, we need lots of different types of staff. There are some resources which I would really recommend. There's Charity Jobs is one of, you know, some of these websites where you can look at sort of what jobs are available. Charity Jobs, Bond, which is the umbrella organisation for NGOs in the UK. Prospects are a couple of the job boards. Guidance and advice services, you know, again, Guardian's very good to look at. But there are some courses about introductions to international development that you can do. Some of them are free, actually. And some organisations do have graduate schemes as well. Not so many, but a few of them do. And this, I want to show that my last video, but this is my favourite video because Amelia, who spoke to you earlier about her favourite part of the role is working with the girls. This is something that her and her team were behind, where they really mastermind, and we use this to a sort of call to action to the UK government, and it's about giving girls in the countries in which we work agency and voice to speak for themselves. And so this video was the culmination of a lot of work of girls who are living in crisis situations. So they're living as refugees or in crisis camps, or in refugees or internally displaced camps, putting together their call to action. And we launched this in the House of Lords earlier this year, when we could do things like that.
When crisis hits, gross lives are turned upside down. We know what needs to change. We want you to listen to us. We
want gender equality.
Since fleeing from South Sudan, I've lost my freedom. Girls' movements are contra because it's not seen to be safe. We miss out on job, school, and friendship. We need to be treated equally.
We want better support and services for unaccompanied minors.
Back home, my parents kept me safe. Now they are not here. I struggle on my own. Some girls are mistreated by their guardians or attacked at night. More needs to be done to keep those without their families safe.
We want access to a safe and quality education.
In South Sudan, my parents paid for me to go to school. Here, there's no one to pay for me. The only school is very far. I had to take a husband. I had no choice. We urgently need small secondary schools.
We want to be safe from gender-based violence.
Inkambi ishobora kuba ikibazo ku mukobwa n'abandi. Abakobwa barahohoterwa. Iyo batanze ikirego, bashyirwa mu kato bagasigara nta kirengera bafite bifashe. Umukobwa akeneye ubwisanzure n'umutekano uhagije.
We want good health and well-being.
nk'impunzi duhura n'ibibazo byinshi, biragora guhangana n'ibibazo duhura nabyo, tukaba dukeneye inkunga. Abakobwa bakeneye ihumure.
We want control of our bodies.
At home, my mother helped me when I had my periods. She told me what was going to happen and made sure I had pads. Now I cannot afford pads and sometimes have to use drugs. We need support with provisions.
We want fair and decent work.
Biragoye kubona akazi kuko ndi impunzi. Bisanga mu bigeragezo by'ihohotera. Abakobwa benshi birangira bagiye mu mirimo y'uburaya. Abakobwa dukeneye ibyiza biruta.
We want to be involved in creating peaceful and sustainable futures.
Ndifuriza amahoro abakobwa bose nkanjye. Ibitekerezo byanjye bifite agaciro. Turashaka kumva. This is our call to action. We want you to listen to us.
So hopefully that provided you with sort of some useful things to think about and maybe a little bit of inspiration as well about looking for a career outside the corporate sector. But don't ever dismiss the value of working in the corporate sector, and it's good to have a bit of both as well, I would say. Very happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Rose. That was amazing. I'm sure everyone agreed that was so comprehensive and super useful. If anyone does have any questions, just pop them in the chat now. I'll give it a minute. I know Julia has asked if you would be able to send in a link for that video, Rose.
Yeah, is that the one at the end? I can certainly send a link for that for sure. I'll send it to Georgia and then she can forward it. Yeah, it was a bit glitchy. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I think, well, I have a question myself. Could you elaborate on how kind of NGOs like yourselves would go about influencing governmental decisions?
Yeah,
because I imagine it is quite a difficult kind of approach.
Yeah, and I think it's different. I mean, we focus very much on the UK, and so what we do is what do we do? We first of all we bring evidence about what works. So one of the great advantages that NGOs have is that we're working in the countries where the money has been spent. A lot of our programs we will collect baseline data about what the status is at the beginning of the project. When we work with the project and our interventions, we'll collect midline and endline data. So we have evidence that we can provide to support, to suggest to the government what actions they need to be doing, where they need to be spending their money. So we have evidence, based on our experience in the field, but we also do quite a lot of sort of policy work where we'll be analysing and working out, if governments commit to spend a certain amount of money, are they spending it in that area? And so we will hold governments to account for the commitments and promises they've made. We'll provide evidence to them. We'll calculate, we do calculations about if they want to achieve their goals, how much they need to spend to achieve that, because we all know governments are great at saying we're going to do all A, B and C, but you have to put the resources behind it. And so we use a combination of techniques like insider influencing, so working closely, we would work very closely with what used to be DFID, the gender teams inside DFID, helping them prepare documents that would then go up for ministerial approval, bringing expertise, and they really appreciate our expertise. But then we also use public pressure. So we will ask our supporters to write to their MPs, which means that MPs have to respond, and we will get MPs to ask questions in the House of Lords or in the House of Commons. And actually at the minute, with public sexual harassment, we are working, and I spoke to an MP yesterday afternoon to try and get a 10-minute rule bill introduced to bring in new legislation. So, for example, Plan International UK started work on period poverty in the UK in 2015-16. And as a result of that work and campaigning and bringing things to the attention of the government, we managed to get the government to commit to free sanitary products in schools across England. So that's examples of the type of things that we can do. And in some of the, in countries in which we work, in Nigeria and places like that, we do the same thing. But what we're trying to do more and more is make sure it's the girls that are the head of these campaigns. It's the girls' voices speaking for themselves, rather than us speaking on their behalf, because they're more than capable of speaking. We just provide them with the support, the expertise, the resources, help sort of design the strategy. Every time you have a change objective, you need to have a fairly good strategy around how you're going to get that, and it can take years. So that's just some of the techniques that we use. I see there's a question in there from Grace. When finding field experience, do you have any advice for making sure you don't end up with volunteerism type projects? Yeah, I think that's where, it's a very good point, and I think there is some of that. Well, we know there is some of that sort of volunteerism, and I think that's where things like the International Citizenship Service is a very established volunteering program, which is set up, and remember, it's set up with a dual purpose. It's not only about supporting the communities, it is also about developing the skills of young people. So it is dual purpose, and I think it's important to remember that. And so it is about giving young people experiences, but support. So I think going through established organizations, like, a lot of organizations like Concern Worldwide, where I volunteered, have stopped those volunteering programs because over the last 30 years, the aid sector has really professionalized. And so, a lot of things that, we would have been sending expats out to do are done by local people now, and expats only go out to do work where you can't find, in places like South Sudan, there's very low capabilities in country because any of the human capital was there left during all the civil unrest. So it's when, really as NGOs, and it's very expensive to bring in expats in, it's extremely expensive, even strangely enough, even if you are bringing volunteers into a country, it tends to be very expensive to do that. For a charity, it's not necessarily a cheap way of doing it. It's much more effective if we can work with local staff who know the community, the contexts, and so on and so forth.
That's fantastic. I hope that's answered your question, Grace. I think just one other question that we had was just if you could possibly just elaborate on what you were saying about decolonializing the development sector.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is, the aid sector was set up, 40, 50 years ago. And it is very much a sort of, as a lot of the empire started to become independent, it is very much set up as rich nations helping poorer nations. But within it, we've brought our own biases and our own structures, and even the language and terminology we use. We talk about the field office, we talk about going on a mission, but you don't. Yes, it's an interesting language that we are using, which is a language of power and dominance. And so there's a lot of thought now starting to work on these things to think about, and it's not only about language, but it's also about where decisions are made, and how decisions are made, and how we try to, again, it's not about not having power, and but it's about recognizing that, being very clear about it. It's about really respecting local knowledge and understanding, and I think that happens to an extent, but like all of these things, it's a journey. And I think the Black Lives Matter movement really raised that journey up, that issue up within NGOs, and it's a good thing. It's very challenging as a leader within NGO. It's very challenging, but it's something that we really have to, well, it's something that we really want to address. But there's so many systemic issues within the system that keeps it the way it is. It's quite hard to change it, if that makes any sense. It's a very complex issue, but it is something that certainly we're all starting to grapple with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions. We are kind of nearing the end of the hour anyways. So I'll just give a couple of seconds. So if anyone has, just raise your hand or put it in the chat. I think we're okay. I think that is us then. Thank you so much, Rose. That was absolutely fantastic. And thank you everyone for coming. I hope you all found it interesting.
It's a pleasure. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you.
And enjoy your festive breaks. I hope you all have a safe holiday, and all goes well when you get back next term. I hope you do get back next term.
I know, thank you. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Rose, honestly.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I'm happy to share some of those links so you can have a look at them.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll pop those on all of our social media. So that's perfect.
Yeah, lovely. And so are you going to so in terms of share the recording, does that just go onto your website, or what do you do with the recording?
The recording, yeah, we'll get the link for that, and then it'll go on to the Edu-venture website, and we'll share on our social media, and I can email it to you.
Yeah.
I'm actually just going to stop it now.